What is up, metal and heavy music fans? It's Flight of Icarus again with MetalTrenches.com, and today we have a review of At the Gates and their new album, The Nightmare of Being, via Century Media Records. And hey, if you like to be kept up to date with the best and brightest metal bands and albums from the underground and above, then stick with me by hitting that subscribe button down below. Also stay to the end for a bonus review. At the Gates is of course the legendary Swedish band largely responsible for creating the blueprint for melodic death metal with their early albums, including the seminal Slaughter of the Soul in 1995. After a lengthy hiatus following this benchmark album, the band returned once more to drop new material in At War with Reality in 2014 and again in 2018 with To Drink from the Night itself. The Nightmare of Being is their 7th full-length effort and one that frontman Tomas Lindgerg calls their most ambitious to date. So is it? The Spectre of Extinction, eternal in its rage. We open up with the more typical fare in the dual attack of Spectre of Extinction and The Paradox. Beginning with Spectre of Extinction, this is a solid opener. It acts as a nice throwback to the old days of Gothenburg sound with the many great riffs and some solid dynamics. Nice acoustic intro as well. I wasn't super impressed initially, but it has definitely grown on me. The Paradox, while also a good song in its own right, never really wowed me as much, and despite having its moments, still doesn't do a whole lot for me. Nice guitar riffs once more, and Lindberg definitely doing his thing with those belted snarls. Pretty decent texturing overall too. It just feels like something is missing at times. I do love that super heavy chuggy part at the end though. But if you ask me, one of the first singles should have been the abstract Enthroned. This track still delivers on all of those traditional At the Gates elements to please the longtime fans, not to mention an awesome harmonized solo, but then it tests the waters with some gorgeous strings for extra flavor in the third act. It's really the perfect setup for what to expect, because honestly, those two openers are arguably the least interesting of the entire album. And speaking of strings, Touched by the White Hands of Death, The Fall into Time, Spectre of Extinction, and Cult of Salvation all also incorporate them, but more so than ever before. Previous albums over their career have teased their use here and there, but on this one they are fully embraced in ways that even gave me mild Death Cult era Dimmu Borgir vibes. Cult of Salvation even steps this up further with a children's choir as well. And The Fall into Time feels more like the proggier side of Led Zeppelin with its noodly guitars and frequent stylistic changes.
Icarus. So, what are you trying to tell me here, little man, that you don't like Zepp?
Tracks like these make it clear that At the Gates were making a conscious decision to evolve their sound on this one. A wise decision considering that the previous two albums felt a little underwhelming to me with the usual bag of tricks. So finally, with the third single, At the Gates made it clear that this is not your daddy's At the Gates record. But the innovation and surprises don't end there either. Garden of Cyrus continues the trend with another more morose and thoughtful composition that is borderline doom metal at times. This segues into a lovely clean guitar solo alongside a moody, grumbling bass groove that really took me to another plane, only to be one-upped quite suddenly by a seriously awesome saxophone performance. I hear a lot of saxophone in metal these days. In fact, we just got two great ones back to back last month in White Ward and Fractal Universe. But I'll admit that this one still caught me off guard, so hats off to At the Gates for keeping things fresh and unexpected this far into their career.
It is evolving.
Side note, fun story behind this moment. I guess when they were playing Roadburn, they played a Philip Glass cover and weren't really sure how it was going to go over. The fans loved it, and Thomas said that that was part of their moment where it was like, oh, okay, so we can sort of do whatever we want. That, and they're also fans of Coltrane. The Nightmare of Being is certainly an interesting outing as well. I have mixed feelings about these spoken word portions, as on the one hand, they give me nostalgia for a lot of other melodic death metal albums from back in the early 2000s, particularly In Flames, but on the other hand, they always come off as a little corny. Fortunately, the melodic, clean guitar line that complements this portion and carries through much of the song is pretty entrancing and really ramps up the atmosphere. It's this haunting razor's edge of melancholy and dread that reminds me of both Dark Tranquillity's The Gallery and Akira Yamaoka's work on Silent Hill. Then there's Cult of Salvation for another slower, brooding arrangement somewhere between early Dark Tranquillity and the latest album from Tribulation, complete with a little piano at that. And the closer Winter of Reason that has what sounds like a beautifully understated little Hammond organ outro to close things off. I could be wrong, but that's what it sounds like to me. But the track that actually was more unexpected than anything else was Cosmic Pessimism. This has some of At the Gate's best and most unique guitar work to date. It's this strange cross between Opeth, Isan, and maybe just a dash of Radiohead for good measure. This backed by a great driving rhythm to really get your head bobbing despite the dark philosophical themes inspired by writer Tomas Lindgerg. It's also interesting to hear Tomas try to expand his vocal offerings here with some lower, more laid-back moments, although at times it does feel like maybe a guest singer would have added even more. In any case, this really knocked me off my feet more than I ever thought anything on this album would. On a broader note, The Nightmare of Being sports great production and mixing that I think sounds much better than To Drink from the Night itself. Maybe it's just the more dynamic songwriting coming forwards, but either way this just feels stronger in every possible way. Admittedly, I went into this with very low expectations after the last one, but I can admit when I'm wrong. Thomas is right, this is their most ambitious album to date. Maybe not their best, but definitely one that really swings for the fences. Turning to my scales, I give The Nightmare of Being a 9 for enjoyability. It's not perfect by any means, but I find it extremely engaging in similar ways to the aforementioned Tribulation album with all of its twists and turns. I give it a 9 for musicianship. The songwriting and performances are absolutely on point here and well beyond anything the band has attempted before. And speaking of which, I also give it a 9 for innovation. As I've said before, it's always nice to see a band decades into their career still looking for ways to experiment and expand their sound. So a flat 9 overall and an A- for At the Gates and The Nightmare of Being. But don't go anywhere because I also want to tell you about Siderian and their new album Lost on Void's Horizon via Edge Circle. Siderian is a Slovenian band formed in 2010 and formerly known as Teleport. Inspired by the likes of Gorguts, Voivod, and Blood Incantation, this is the follow-up to 2018's The Expansion. The opener, Aeolith, is my personal favorite, a very psychedelic fusion of progressive black and death metal with just a dash of thrash just where it's most suited. Towards the middle, the already impressive composition opens up into a very Opeth-worthy solo. There's a deep sense of melancholy, but backed by impressive performances that make the misery morbidly engaging. It's like watching a python slowly devour a struggling rodent. Other parts like Traversing get even more eerie, reminiscent of the more somber moments of Imperial Triumphant, while the ominous Lost on Void's Horizon has more than a little Deathspell Omega in its DNA, but with a surprise Blade Runner synth interlude to shake things up. Maybe just a touch of emptiness on this one as well. It's dark, dreary stuff for sure, but also never dull. You've never had a better time watching your brain matter circle the drain. And that'll do it for now, y'all, but be sure to check out my At the Gates tier list and just stick around in general because I got plenty more videos for you to check out, more full album reviews of new releases, interviews with bands on the podcast, you name it, we've got it, so plenty of reasons to subscribe if you have not already. You can also chat with me on Discord and support on Patreon, but that'll do it for now. Flight of Icarus signing off. I will see you in the trenches.